What's good with you? It's your boy Travis Kinley coming back to you with another one. Hours of service 103, the 8-2 split and the 7-3 split, the sleeper berth split. Let's split it up. Be like a banana and split. What's good with you? It's your boy Travis Kinley coming back to you with another one. Hours of service 103, the sleeper berth split. As you see, I have my sleeper berth split behind me because my bed is not made up and I have things just thrown around a little bit. So we won't be showing that today. Anyways, if you have not watched Hours of Service 101 and 102, I strongly encourage you to do so. I can next to guarantee, if you are not familiar with the information in Hours of 101 and 102, or at the very least Hours of Service 101, this video is not going to make any sense to you. So if you have not done so and you're not familiar with Hours of Service kind of laws and parameters, just stop this right now. So it's a total waste of time. You're going to be bored out of your mind. You're going to be asking yourself the whole time, what in the world is he talking about? Okay, you ready? Let's get it. All right, so if you remember from Hours of 101, we talked about our 8-hour clock, our 11-hour clock, and our 14-hour clock, and our 70-hour clock. I described it like a pyramid, right? One of the things I alluded to in Hours of Service 101 was the fact that it is possible to pause your 14-hour clock. Now, I've been meaning to get to this video for quite some time now, but honestly, I've just shied away from it for the sake of easier topics, if you will. The sleeper berth split is a little difficult to explain verbally, but I'm going to do my best to simplify it as much as possible. Just a very quick recap. Your 14-hour clock is responsible for timing your work shifts. Okay, no matter what time of day it is, it doesn't matter if it's before or after. If it passes midnight, will it restart? It's not going to restart. It's responsible for timing your 14-hour shifts, your work days, if you will. Work nights, work overnights, whatever. You have 14 hours to get your job done. And in 101, I explained the only way to reset that 14 hours is to take a 10-hour break. However, there is a way to pause your 14-hour clock. Here is how you do it. It's with the sleeper berth split. Okay? Here's what I mean. Your 14-hour clock will pause if at any time you take a consecutive 2-hour off-duty break, or at a minimum a 7-hour sleeper berth break. Okay? 8-2 split, 7-3 split. Minimum of 2-hour consecutive off-duty, or a minimum of 7 hours consecutive sleeper berth. Now, if you take a minimum of consecutive 2 hours off duty, what must occur before your time runs out is an 8-hour consecutive sleeper berth status, if you will. Okay? Same thing happens with the 7-3 split. If you intend to execute a 7-3 split, you must take a 3-hour consecutive off-duty, be in a 3-hour off-duty status for consecutive 3 hours, and then if you do so before your time runs out, you must be in the status of sleeper berth for a consecutive 7 hours. What I mean is, a little 3 hours off duty and 4 hours sleeper berth does not equal your 7-hour sleeper berth status. Well, what will happen? It will pause that clock. What will happen? Let's first deal with the 8-2 split. Okay. If you were to start driving, you did your vehicle inspection, but we're not going to include that time. Excuse me. If you were to start driving and you drove for 2 hours, right? That's 2 hours off of your 8-hour clock. That's 2 hours off of your 11-hour clock. That's 2 hours off of your 14. Okay. And then you went off duty immediately for 2 hours. At the end of your 2 hours, when you look at your clock, you will notice that all of your times reflect exactly what they did the moment you hit off duty. Assuming it was a square 2 hours, your 14-hour clock is going to have 12 hours on it. Your 11-hour clock is going to have 9 hours on it. At the end of your 2-hour break, that is what your clocks will show. Your 8-hour will be full because you took a 30-minute break, but your 11-hour will have 9 hours on it. Your 14-hour will have 12 hours on it at the end of that off duty. Now, if you check it 30 minutes into your 2 hours of off duty status, your 14 is going to keep ticking. But at the end of that 2 hours of off duty status, it will reflect 12 hours missing off of your 14-hour clock, and that clock will be paused until A, you start moving, or B, you complete a full 10 hours of off duty, and then it will refill. But we're not going to do the 10 hours of off duty, right? We're trying to execute an 8-2 split. I'm starting with the 2. I'm doing it intentionally. I'll explain later. But once you do that 2-hour break and then you start moving again, your 14-hour will start ticking down from that 12 hours left. Okay? Before you run out of time, you need to execute an 8-hour sleeper berth and execute 8 hours in the sleeper berth status. Failure to do so will cause you to have an hours of service violation from experience. Okay, you got me? All right. Okay, quick recap. You drive for 2 hours, your 11-hour clock is going to say 9 hours, your 14-hour clock is going to say 12 hours. You stop for 2 hours, your clocks are going to stay right there. You start driving again, maybe you drive 1 hour or something of that nature, and now you're ready to go to sleep for 10 hours. You must be in the sleeper berth for 8 hours. Okay? You got to be in the sleep. Now, in that scenario, you wouldn't have run out of time before your 10-hour break came back. I get it. If you're one of those people that think real fast, I get it. Nevertheless, my point is you must execute an 8-hour sleeper berth. Let's do another scenario. You drive for 2 hours, same thing, 9 hours on your 11-hour clock, 12 hours on your 14-hour clock. Then you start driving again after 2 hours of being in off-duty status. Okay? Let's say you drive 6 hours. Now you have 3 hours on your 11-hour clock, and now you have, 6 hours on your 14-hour clock. Okay? You need to go in sleeper berth status. If you keep it in off duty for the remaining 6 hours of your 14-hour, you have committed an hours of service violation. You ran out of your 14 hours because you technically would not have had time, if I'm correct. You see what I'm saying, though? In case that math was off, I'd have to pull out a piece of paper. I didn't start this video with a piece of paper in my hand. There are times when you can go in off duty or go in sleeper berth, stop your 14-hour clock. If you don't do the second half of your split requirements, it will assume that, well, if the 14-hour clock had never stopped, would he have run out of time? If so, it's an hours of service violation. All right, let's flip it around. Let's start with the 8. Maybe you have a delivery at 6 o'clock in the morning, and it is currently 11 o'clock at night. And you just stopped the truck, right? You're right outside the place too. You're like right in the parking lot. All right. What you'd need to do, let's say 10 o'clock, just to keep 8-2 split. What you'd need to do is you would need to go into sleeper berth immediately. So at the end of that 8-hour sleeper berth, your 14-hour clock will reflect whatever it said prior to you putting it into sleeper berth. It will pause. You see what I'm saying? And now when it pauses, you have enough time to complete your delivery and then go back into off-duty status. Maybe you'll get another load before you go into off-duty status, whatever the case may be. You see what I'm saying? That's just one situation when you may want to execute a sleeper berth split. The same thing is true with the 7-3 split. You drive for 3 hours on your 11-hour clock, you're going to have 8 hours. On your 14-hour clock, you're going to have 11 hours. Okay? If you stop for 3 hours in an off-duty status, I personally prefer the off-duty to start with the off-duty status. I'll tell you why later. If you start with the off-duty status, 3 hours in the off-duty status, it's going to stop those clocks right there. 11-hour clock will say 8 hours. Your 14-hour clock will say 11 hours. It's going to stop it right there. Then you can start driving again. And whenever you need to, boom, you can pop it in sleeper berth. You'll only need to stay in sleeper berth for 7 hours. Once you've been in the sleeper berth for 7 hours, your clock is going to give you back the time that you used prior to your first off-duty status. You see? All right, so let me try to do that real fast. All right, so you drive for 3 hours, you come here and you do your 3-hour break. You drive some more, you come here, you do your 7-hour sleeper berth. It's going to give you the time back that you had prior to your 3-hour off-duty status. You get that back. All right, so I'm going to show you just some clips of me doing this today. All right, so just as I suspected, we've been here for 2 hours. As you see, I went off duty 1747. It's 1946. And in less than a minute, you will see my 14-hour clock, the third from the bottom. You'll see it change.